Let me start with something uncomfortable, because growth never begins with comfort. Laziness doesn't knock on your door loudly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come dressed as failure. Laziness whispers. It says, do it tomorrow. It says, you're tired. It says, you've got time. And while you're listening to that quiet voice, your potential is bleeding out silently. The most dangerous enemy of your future is not poverty, not lack of education, not lack of opportunity. The most dangerous enemy is the version of you that keeps choosing comfort over commitment. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your life is perfectly designed to give you the results you are currently getting. If you don't like the results, you don't need a new year, a new job, or a new mentor. You need new standards. Laziness is not a personality trait, it is a habit. And habits, whether good or bad, compound. Every time you choose ease over effort, you're voting against the person you say you want to become. You don't lose your dreams in one day. You abandon them one small excuse at a time. Let me challenge you with this question. What if the reason you're frustrated isn't because life is unfair, but because you've been inconsistent? Potential is God's gift to you, but discipline is your gift back to God. You don't get rewarded for what you intend to do. You get rewarded for what you repeatedly do. The marketplace doesn't pay for motivation, it pays for execution. And execution requires energy, focus, and discipline. Things laziness slowly steals while pretending to be rest. Here's a hook you need to grab onto. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not talent, it's behavior. Highly successful people don't feel like working all the time. They work because they made a decision, not because they waited for a feeling. Feelings are unreliable. Discipline is dependable. If you only work when you feel inspired, you will live a life that never inspires anyone. Laziness is not loud, and that is exactly why it is so dangerous. It doesn't arrive with warning signs or dramatic consequences. It slips into your life quietly, disguised as comfort, rest, or harmless delay. It convinces you that skipping today won't matter, that you can make it up later, that one missed opportunity is insignificant. But while you're negotiating with yourself, something valuable is being taken from you. Not your money, not your resources, your future. The scariest thing about laziness is that it feels safe while it's stealing your potential. Most people think failure comes from making big mistakes, but in reality, it comes from making small excuses repeatedly. Laziness doesn't tell you to quit your dreams, it tells you to postpone them. It doesn't say give up, it says not now. That delay feels harmless in the moment, but compounded over weeks, months, and years, it becomes devastating. One day you wake up wondering where the time went, why you're still in the same place, and why your life hasn't changed. The truth is uncomfortable. Nothing changed because nothing changed. Here's a hook most people avoid facing. Laziness is a form of self-betrayal. Every time you choose comfort over discipline, you break a promise to your future self. You already know what you need to do. The problem isn't lack of clarity, it's lack of execution. Laziness keeps you busy with low-value activities so you feel productive while staying unproductive. It lets you scroll, plan, think, and talk about success, but never actually touch it. And the longer that cycle continues, the more normal mediocrity begins to feel. What makes laziness especially dangerous is how reasonable it sounds. It uses logic against you. It says you deserve rest even when you haven't earned it. It tells you to wait for motivation instead of building discipline. It convinces you that you need perfect conditions before you take action. And while you're waiting for the right mood, the right time, or the right opportunity, someone else with less talent but more discipline is passing you by. Potential without action is nothing more than wasted possibility. Another hard truth is this: laziness doesn't just steal time, it steals identity. The more you delay action, the more you start seeing yourself as someone who doesn't finish, doesn't follow through, and doesn't fully commit. Confidence doesn't disappear overnight, it erodes slowly through inaction. Each unfinished task weakens your belief in yourself. Each excuse reinforces the habit of settling. Eventually, you stop expecting more from yourself, and when that happens, life will meet you at that lowered expectation. Here's the wake-up call. Laziness always charges interest. You don't just pay for it today, you pay for it tomorrow with stress, pressure, and regret. The work you avoid now doesn't vanish, it multiplies. Opportunities don't wait forever. Time doesn't pause because you're tired or unmotivated. Life keeps moving forward, and if you don't move with it, you get left behind. The tragedy is not that people fail. The tragedy is that so many people never truly try because laziness convinced them they had more time than they actually do. If this feels uncomfortable, that's good. Discomfort is often the sound of truth knocking. Laziness can only steal from you if you keep giving it permission. The moment you start acting despite resistance, despite fatigue, despite doubt, you begin reclaiming what was taken. Every small disciplined action is a statement that your future matters more than your comfort. The moment you make that decision consistently, laziness loses its power over your life. Your life is not a mystery, and your results are not random. They are a reflection of the standards you have accepted, tolerated, and enforced every single day. This is a truth that challenges the ego because it removes excuses and places responsibility exactly where it belongs, on you. If your outcomes are average, inconsistent, or disappointing, it is not because you lack potential or intelligence. It is because your standards are set at a level that allows those results to exist. The moment you truly understand this, you stop waiting for change and start becoming the change. Here's a hook that shifts perspective. You don't get what you want in life, you get what you tolerate. Standards are the invisible rules that govern your behavior when no one is watching. They determine how early you wake up, how focused you stay, how you respond to challenges, and how quickly you give up when things become uncomfortable. Goals sound inspiring, but standards are operational. A goal is what you aim for. A standard is what you refuse to go below. When standards are low, even big goals collapse under pressure. Many people confuse desire with commitment. They want success, freedom, growth, and abundance, but they haven't raised their standards high enough to support those desires. Wanting more without demanding more from yourself creates frustration. It creates the feeling of being stuck. That frustration is not a sign that you're incapable. It's a signal that your standards no longer match your aspirations. Until your daily behavior aligns with the life you say you want, nothing changes. Standards show up in small decisions that seem insignificant in the moment. Whether you finish what you start, whether you show up on time, whether you do the work when it's inconvenient, whether you settle for good enough instead of excellence. These moments are not small, they are decisive. Success is not built in dramatic breakthroughs, but in disciplined consistency. When your standards rise, your behavior rises. When your behavior rises, your results have no choice but to follow. Another uncomfortable truth is that people often protect their comfort more than their potential. Lower standards feel safe because they don't demand growth. They allow you to explain away underperformance with excuses instead of confronting the discipline gap. But comfort has a cost. Every time you accept less than your best, you reinforce an identity that limits your future. Over time, that identity becomes your ceiling. You don't rise to the level of your motivation, you fall to the level of your standards. Here's a powerful shift. Raising your standards doesn't require perfection, it requires honesty. It means being honest about what you're capable of and refusing to live below that capacity. It means deciding in advance how you will act, even when emotions fluctuate. Standards eliminate decision fatigue because they remove negotiation. When something is a standard, you don't debate it, you execute it. This is why high performers appear disciplined. They've simply removed the option to be inconsistent. When you raise your standards, resistance will show up. Old habits will fight back. People around you may feel uncomfortable with the change. That discomfort is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's proof that you're breaking past a previous limit. Growth always demands a new level of expectation. And the moment you hold yourself to a higher standard, life responds differently. Opportunities increase, confidence strengthens, and momentum builds. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The most empowering realization is this: you are one decision away from a higher standard. Not a massive overhaul, not a dramatic transformation, but a firm internal line that says, this is who I am now. When your standards change, your identity changes, and when your identity changes, your results must follow. Comfort is seductive because it feels earned, even when it isn't. It wraps itself in familiarity and convinces you that staying where you are is safer than stepping into what you could become. Comfort doesn't challenge you, doesn't demand more from you, and doesn't require growth. That's exactly why it is so dangerous. The moment comfort becomes your priority, progress becomes optional. And when progress is optional, greatness becomes impossible. Here's a hook most people overlook. Everything you want in life exists outside your comfort zone, yet most people spend their entire lives trying to decorate the inside of it. Comfort creates the illusion of peace while quietly suffocating ambition. It tells you that avoiding discomfort is wisdom, when in reality, avoiding discomfort is avoidance of growth. Every meaningful level up in life, financially, mentally, spiritually, physically, requires tension. Without tension, nothing stretches. Without stretching, nothing grows. The reason comfort is such a powerful enemy is because it doesn't feel like resistance. It feels like relief. It feels like choosing rest over effort, ease over challenge, familiarity over uncertainty. But growth doesn't happen in relief. It happens in resistance. Muscles grow through resistance. Skills grow through struggle. Confidence grows through facing what you once feared. When you consistently choose comfort, you train yourself to retreat instead of rise. Comfort also weakens urgency. It makes time feel abundant when it is not. It whispers that tomorrow will always be available, that there's no rush, that you can always start later. But later is the most expensive word in the vocabulary of regret. Opportunities don't announce their expiration dates. Energy changes, responsibilities increase. Life compounds whether you act or not. Comfort delays action until action feels heavy, forced, and overwhelming. Another hook that demands attention. Comfort doesn't just slow you down, it reshapes your identity. Over time, choosing comfort teaches you who you believe you are. You begin to see yourself as someone who avoids challenge, who stops when it gets hard, who prefers ease over excellence. Identity is formed by repeated behavior, and behavior is shaped by what you prioritize. When comfort is the priority, mediocrity becomes the outcome, even for people with extraordinary potential. What makes comfort even more dangerous is how socially acceptable it is. No one criticizes you for playing it safe. No one questions you for choosing security over stretch. Society often rewards predictability and discourages risk. But greatness has never been produced by safety. Every person who has done something remarkable had to become comfortable being uncomfortable. They had to endure uncertainty, resistance, criticism, and fear. Comfort would have disqualified them long before success ever arrived. There is a hidden cost to comfort that most people don't calculate. Comfort today creates pressure tomorrow. The work you avoid now doesn't disappear, it accumulates. When challenges are ignored early, they become crises later. When discipline is avoided in small ways, life demands it in harsher ways. Comfort delays pain, but it increases its intensity. Growth invites pain early, but it reduces suffering later. Stepping out of comfort doesn't require dramatic moves, it requires deliberate discomfort. Doing what you don't feel like doing, starting before you feel ready, speaking up when silence is easier, pushing past the moment you would normally stop. These small acts of resistance compound into confidence. The more often you choose growth over comfort, the more powerful you become. Discomfort stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like direction. The truth is simple but demanding. Comfort will never introduce you to your best self. That version of you lives on the other side of resistance, discipline, and courage. The moment you stop asking what feels easiest and start asking what helps me grow, everything begins to shift. Motivation is exciting, but it is unreliable. It comes and goes like a feeling, rising when conditions are favorable and disappearing the moment discomfort appears. Discipline, on the other hand, is steady, predictable, and powerful. The mistake most people make is building their future on something emotional instead of something structural. When you depend on motivation, you give your progress permission to stop whenever your mood changes. When you depend on discipline, progress continues whether you feel like it or not. Here's a hook that exposes the problem. If motivation were enough, everyone would be successful. Everyone has felt inspired at some point. Everyone has watched a video, heard a speech, or imagined a better life. Inspiration is common. Execution is rare. The difference between people who win and people who wish is not how motivated they feel, but how disciplined they are when motivation fades. Discipline is what shows up after excitement leaves. Motivation waits for the perfect moment. Discipline creates momentum in imperfect conditions. Motivation says, I'll start when I feel ready. Discipline says, I'll start and become ready along the way. Life does not reward potential energy. It rewards kinetic energy. Movement creates clarity. Action creates confidence. Waiting creates doubt. Discipline understands this and moves first, even when the mind resists. Another truth that challenges comfort is this. Discipline is an identity, not an event. It is not something you do once. It is something you become. You don't wake up disciplined one day. You practice discipline until it becomes who you are. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you strengthen trust with yourself. Every time you quit early, you weaken it. Self-trust is the foundation of confidence, and discipline is how that foundation is built. Motivation is reactive. Discipline is proactive. Motivation depends on external stimuli, music, speeches, emotions, circumstances. Discipline depends on decisions. When something is a decision, it no longer requires negotiation. You don't debate whether to brush your teeth or show up to work. Those actions are standards. High performers turn critical behaviors into non-negotiables. That is why they appear consistent while others struggle. They remove choice from the equation. Here's a hook that reframes effort. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is choosing your long-term benefit over your short-term comfort. It is saying your future matters enough to do the work today. People often think discipline limits freedom, but the opposite is true. Discipline creates freedom, freedom from chaos, from regret, from constantly starting over. The more disciplined you are, the more options you gain. Discipline also simplifies life. When you know what you will do, regardless of how you feel, you reduce mental friction. Energy is no longer wasted on internal arguments. The mind resists effort, but it respects consistency. Once discipline becomes a pattern, resistance weakens. What once felt hard becomes automatic. What once required force becomes habit. That is the hidden power of discipline. It compounds silently. The reason discipline outperforms motivation is because it operates independently of emotion. Emotions fluctuate, but commitments endure. Discipline shows up on good days and bad days, when progress is visible and when it isn't. It understands that results lag behind effort. Motivation wants immediate feedback. Discipline is willing to invest without instant reward. That patience is what separates short-term excitement from long-term success. Most people don't fail because they lack desire. They fail because they lack structure. Discipline provides that structure. It is the bridge between intention and outcome. When you stop asking how you feel and start honoring what you decided, everything changes. Consistency is the force that turns ordinary actions into extraordinary results. It is not flashy, it is not exciting, and that is exactly why most people underestimate it. Everyone admires big wins, sudden breakthroughs, and overnight success stories, but very few people are willing to commit to the daily discipline that creates them. Talent may open the door, but consistency is what keeps you in the room. Without it, potential remains theoretical, impressive in conversation, but invisible in reality. Here's a hook that reframes success. The future you want is built by what you do repeatedly, not occasionally. One great day will not change your life, but one disciplined day repeated hundreds of times will. Consistency removes the pressure to be perfect because it replaces intensity with reliability. You don't need heroic effort, you need persistent effort. When small actions are repeated daily, they compound into outcomes that appear effortless to outsiders but are the result of long-term commitment. Consistency is powerful because it rewires identity. Every repeated action sends a signal to the brain about who you are. When you show up consistently, you begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. That shift in self-image changes how you think, how you decide, and how you respond to challenges. Confidence doesn't come from motivation or talent, it comes from evidence. Consistency provides that evidence. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you reinforce self-belief. Most people struggle with consistency not because they are incapable, but because they overestimate what they can do in the short term and underestimate what they can do in the long term. They start strong, burn out quickly, and then stop altogether. Consistency requires humility, the willingness to start small and stay committed. It requires patience, the ability to trust the process even when results are delayed. Growth rarely announces itself early, it reveals itself over time. Here's another hook that exposes the truth. Inconsistency is expensive. It forces you to constantly restart, rebuild momentum, and remotivate yourself. Every time you stop, you pay a psychological cost. Momentum is lost. Confidence weakens, progress slows. Consistency eliminates the need to start over. It creates flow. Once momentum is established, progress requires less effort because the system is already moving. Consistency also protects you from emotional decision-making. When actions are routine, they are no longer influenced by mood. You do the work because it is what you do, not because you feel inspired. This is why professionals outperform amateurs. Professionals show up regardless of circumstances. They understand that discipline is a responsibility, not a preference. Consistency turns effort into habit, and habit reduces resistance. Another overlooked benefit of consistency is clarity. When you take consistent action, feedback becomes visible. You see what works and what doesn't. Adjustments become easier because you are actively engaged in the process. Inconsistency clouds judgment because there is no reliable data. You can't improve what you don't practice regularly. Consistency creates the feedback loop necessary for mastery. Many people abandon consistency because progress feels slow. But slow progress is still progress. Stagnation only occurs when action stops. The most dangerous moment is not when you feel tired or bored, but when you decide that today doesn't matter. Today always matters because it contributes to the pattern you are building. Patterns, not moments, shape destiny. Consistency is not about doing everything. It is about doing the right things repeatedly. It is about honoring the process even when the reward is delayed. When you commit to consistency, you stop chasing shortcuts and start building substance. Over time, the gap between who you are and who you want to become begins to close, not through dramatic leaps, but through steady, deliberate steps taken day after day. Delay feels harmless because it disguises itself as patience, preparation, or timing. It sounds responsible. It feels reasonable. But beneath that calm surface, delay is quietly compounding a cost most people never calculate. Every postponed action carries a price, and that price increases over time. The tragedy is not that people make wrong decisions, it's that they delay making the right ones. Delay doesn't stop the clock, it accelerates the consequences. Here's a hook that exposes the danger. Delay is a decision, even when you pretend it isn't. Not choosing is still choosing. Every time you wait, you are voting for the status quo. You are telling life that today is acceptable, even if you complain about it tomorrow. Delay keeps you busy with preparation while robbing you of progress. It allows you to feel responsible while staying stuck. The most expensive part of delay is lost opportunity. Opportunities are seasonal. They have windows, not warranties. Energy shifts, markets change, responsibilities increase. What feels optional today can become impossible tomorrow. Delay convinces you that opportunity will always be available in the same form, at the same cost, with the same level of effort. That assumption is rarely true. The longer you wait, the narrower your options become. Delay also erodes confidence. Every postponed action weakens trust in yourself. You begin to see yourself as someone who hesitates, overthinks, and second guesses. Confidence is built through movement, not contemplation. When action is delayed, doubt grows. The mind fills the space with fear, complexity, and imagined obstacles. What once felt manageable begins to feel overwhelming, not because the task changed, but because time passed without action. Here's another hook that cuts deep. Delay turns manageable pain into unavoidable pain. The work you avoid today doesn't disappear, it multiplies. Health neglected becomes illness. Skills avoided become incompetence. Conversations postponed become conflicts. Discipline delayed becomes crisis. Delay always shifts effort into the future, but with interest added. What could have been solved with small, intentional action later demands sacrifice under pressure. Delay also distorts perception. It makes the future feel abstract and distant, while the present feels concrete and demand. Short-term comfort wins because long-term consequences feel unreal. But time collapses faster than expected. One day becomes 1 year. 1 year becomes a decade. And suddenly the future you thought you had time for is standing in front of you, asking why you never showed up. The longer delay persists, the heavier starting becomes. Inaction creates friction. Momentum works in both directions, forward through action and backward through avoidance. The longer you wait, the more energy it takes to begin. This is why people often say, I don't know where to start. The truth is they do know, they've just delayed so long that the weight of starting feels unbearable. Delay is especially costly because it hides behind logic. It tells you to wait until conditions are perfect, until you feel more confident, until you have more information. But perfect conditions are a myth. Clarity follows action, not the other way around. Waiting for certainty is a guarantee of stagnation. Those who move early gain experience. Those who wait gain excuses. There's a compounding advantage to acting sooner rather than later. Early action builds skill, resilience, and confidence. It creates momentum that makes future action easier. Delay robs you of that compound growth. While you wait, time keeps investing for or against you. Every day of action is a deposit. Every day of delay is a withdrawal. Delay doesn't just cost time. It costs the version of you that could have existed. Each postponed decision pushes that version further away. And while you can't go back and recover lost time, you can stop the bleeding by acting now. The moment action replaces delay, the cost stops rising and momentum begins to shift. Now listen carefully, because this might change your future. Laziness costs more than effort ever will. It costs missed opportunities, wasted years, broken promises to yourself, and regret. And regret is expensive. Discipline hurts for a moment. Regret hurts for a lifetime. The pain of doing the work is temporary, but the pain of knowing you could have been more, that stays with you. So let me close with this. You don't need to do everything today, but you must do something today. Kill laziness before it kills your potential. Raise your standards, honor your time, respect your future. Because the world doesn't need another person who almost lived up to their potential. The world needs you, disciplined, focused, and fully activated. Decide today that comfort will no longer be your master. Your future is watching what you do next.